Hello my fellow Archons, and welcome to another video. We're currently in the middle of a series exploring and analyzing each house in KeyForge's newest set, Grim Reminders. Last time we took a look at House Untamed, and today we'll be taking on House Unfathomable. Without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start off by looking at their disruption, since when they first arrived in Dark Tidings, that was the role they took on in their own unique way, primarily through exhaustion. They kinda lost some of their classic powers of exhaustion in Winds of Exchange, but a lot of that has been brought back here in Grim Reminders. Call of the Void and Deep Priest Glebe have both been reprinted, along with Sybil Waymare and the Susurrus. Kiri Guiltspine and Rustmiser return as well. New cards include Squallmaster with its scrap ability, Hukaru Icefin with its scrap and reap ability, Dirge of the Deep and Nightmare Inducer exhausting entire houses at once, and Unsettling Ancestry, which kinda reminds me of Portal in the way it archives itself. The house's Curse of Confusion, can also be a massive pain for the opponent to deal with in the way it exhausts turn after turn. It's interesting to see Unfathomable return to its roots of exhaustion somewhat in this set, though in my experience it's never been the strongest form of disruption or board control out there. At the very least, it can neutralize chunks of the enemy's board until you find a way to deal with it more permanently. And sure enough, in addition to its exhausting, Unfathomable does have plenty of ways to control the board and keep it under control. The legendary Catch and Release is reprinted from Winds of Exchange, with other notable cards such as Corrode, Dragnet, Wrath of Ruin, and Kelping Hands returning as well. The new Tendrils from Beyond is a sort of variant on Dragnet, acting as yet another really solid source of bounce. Most of Unfathomable's other board control cards, however, I found to be somewhat spotty and inconsistent. Echoing Death Knell can be rather awkward to play at times, though occasionally it hits for tons of value, and Gatewatcher's Destroyed effect only triggers if your opponent is haunted. Strange Torpedo is temporary, Kilgog's Trench is as wacky as ever, and Alpha Tall is just plain annoying to play with, especially if both players' decks are filled with small creatures. So apart from Catch and Release, Dragnet, and Tendrils from Beyond, Unfathomable can struggle a little when it comes to board control, given that their other primary method is exhausting, which, like I mentioned before, doesn't last forever. When Dis was rotated out, so also was the game's biggest dealer in disruption, and Unfathomable was introduced to fill that gap. Winds of Exchange really doubled down on this with cards like Befuddle, Abyssal Sight, and Bryozorch thrown into the mix, the first two at common rarity. Grim Reminders has sort of backed off on the crazy amounts of disruption, finding a sort of happy medium between Dark Tidings and Woe. Abyssal Sight, Befuddle, and Delusions of Grandeur are sadly nowhere to be seen, but Bryozorch and Plunder did both get reprinted, as did Cop, the underwater spin on Embrent from back in the day. Unfathomable also has a couple cards that move random cards from the opponent's hand to somewhere that's not their hand. Addlefish discards 2 random cards, while Beam of Forgetting puts one on the bottom of their deck, which happens to be fantastic support for their returning key cheat, Dark Discovery. In fact, Unfathomable in this set really enjoys messing with the opponent's deck in various ways, manipulating it to trigger certain effects, which could be a form of disruption in of itself in the right circumstances. Kariki Germinator puts a card from a player's discard pile on the bottom of their deck. You could then take that card and discard it again with Dirge of the Deep to exhaust each creature that shares a house with it, a 2-card combo that gives you some agency over which house gets exhausted. And like I mentioned before, anything that puts known cards on the bottom of the opponent's deck is great setup for Dark Discovery. Its 2 fixed support cards are great and all, but its consistency just increases with things like Beam of Forgetting, Creaky Germinator, and Nightmare Inducer. Unfathomable also has a number of cards which discards cards from the top of a player's deck, often giving you a choice of whose deck you'd like to discard from. Of course, since this is Grim Reminders, this factors big time into the haunted mechanic. If you choose your own deck to discard from, you can make yourself haunted more quickly, or if you choose the opponent, they can become haunted faster. But why would you want to make the opponent haunted quicker, since being haunted is often a beneficial thing and increases the potency of many cards in the set? Well, Unfathomable is unique in that it has very few effects that reward you for being haunted, but has many effects that punish the opponent for being haunted. You can use things like Immersioneer's Reap ability, Guiltspine Mesmerist's Scrap ability, Arcane Transmitter's Action ability, or even the reprint Thalassophobia to make the opponent haunted, then punish them hard for it. Gatewatcher's Destroyed effect can activate properly. Nemoli will allow you to steal 2 instead of 1 upon reap, Tanjimanji increases their key cost by 3, and Thought Swim makes it so the creature equipped with it can't be dealt damage. This punishment can apply with cards out of house too, like Dark Heart of the Forest. Thalassophobia into Dark Heart can be a brutal combo, one I've been on the receiving end of myself. Again, you can use these top of deck discard abilities to your own benefit to activate things like Trawler or Echo Guardian, but they're great for making your opponent haunted and punishing them as a result, sometimes even putting key cards they haven't drawn into yet into their discard pile. Another important stat to analyze is that of Ember Control, and Unfathomable is no slouch when it comes to that. One of its best cards in this regard is the common Trawler, capturing all your opponent's Ember when you're haunted. Often seen in multiples, it can actually get extremely annoying to deal with and is a phenomenal key stopper. Pair it with Soul Vial and Geistoid for some real shenanigans. Covetous Hema, Crushing Deep, Stir Crazy, and Rocolia all return from past sets, as does Weak Link, which was all but useless in Winds of Exchange. Here in Grim Reminders, where exhausting is a little more common and under pressure still exists, you may be able to get a tiny bit more use out of it. Nemeleech is a big threat once it hits the board, and Circle Speak, a card I actually got to spoil during spoiler season, is a card that's confusing to read at first but has a couple solid lines of play to it. Tanjimanji is a great lasting cost increaser, and Call of the Void has potential to fire as well. Then there's the new biggest creature in the game, Thing from the Deep at 30 power, who steals 2 upon fight, which is just insane. And getting a copy of Open the Seal in the discard pile is not hard to do, since he often comes with 2 or 3 copies of it, so Thing from the Deep is a red alert, top priority threat once it hits the board. So on paper, Unfathomable would appear to be a pretty decent and well-rounded house, but in practice it tends to fall short. A lot of the deck manipulators can often feel awkward and finicky to use or get true value out of. Sometimes the payoff is too little for convoluted multi-card combos that conclude with just a few creatures getting exhausted. Many of the common creatures that you see opened all the time just feel like duds and lack tangible impact. I'm rarely happy to open 2 Squall Masters or Echo Guardians when cracking a Grim Reminders deck. Things like Immersioneer don't really further your game plan, but offer fiddly and cumbersome avenues of rather lackluster disruption. Eldritch Sign-In, an uncommon, feels like it should be in Dark Tidings with its equally bland cousin Horrid Sign-In. When put side by side with Cop, another uncommon, there's just no comparison. The disparity in card quality seen on Unfathomable is truly massive, resulting in many pods feeling uninspired and non-threatening. As a support house, the right suite of cards can actually put in some really solid work. Catch and Release, Cop, Trawler, Dragnet, Covetous Hema, Arcane Transmitter are all on the better end of the spectrum for such things, but it fails as a main house or something that your deck's primary strategy will rely upon. Indeed, as a support house, I think Unfathomable can really thrive and flourish, based on all the stats and cards we just talked about, but I don't think its intention was ever to be a deck's lead house, the one advancing the game plan and forging keys. Much of the time, I found it to fall on the weaker end of the house selection this set, and it feels bad cracking a deck and opening a 3rd Hikaru Icefin when in past sets that could have been an Illusions of Grandeur. It has tools, it has moves, and it has a very unique take on the Haunted mechanic, but compared to what other houses in the set are capable of, Unfathomable finds itself falling short more often than not. And there we have it. Any house can have its ups and downs, and Unfathomable is no exception. Despite its frequency of dud cards, Unfathomable can still be a really fun and interesting house to play with unique card designs and neat combos with other houses. Let me know what you guys think of this house, and if you've been having fun with them this set. Thank you all so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you all again in the next one. See you later.